Hi, this is Leslie, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about translation. And the reason is that a friend of mine, you may have heard of him, his name is Edip Yuksel. He's quite well known on YouTube and on the internet and also on academia. He has been in the forefront of the Quranist movement, with which I share a number of ideas and perceptions. Maybe I don't agree with everything, just about everything they say, but I think they're onto something that we really need to pay attention to. And that is the need to focus on the Quran in our understanding of Islam, because it seems to me that traditions, the prophetic traditions in particular, have in a way overshadowed our understanding of the Quran, or eclipsed it, as I put it in some of my papers. So I think the idea to focus on the Quran is good, if you want to understand Islam correctly, that is. And now, for the purpose of a good understanding of Islam, of course, you need a good translation of the Quran. And here's where Edip has produced one translation called the Reformist translation, but he wants to improve it still further, and he asked me to assist in whatever way I can to improve this translation. So I agreed, as I have also an interest in the Quran, and despite the fact that I'm not 100%, to put it that way, in Arabic, I do focus and zero in on certain key expressions and words which I think need attention, and where I think the biggest challenge lies. The biggest challenge lies, as far as I can see, in a correct rendition of some of these terms that I feel have not been correctly rendered into English by even well-known translators. And to give you an example of that, I have, by way of preparing for this task, I started to write a small book on how to translate. And these reflections that I'm sharing with you have arisen as a result of this work in progress. And so in this video, I would like to share some of these concerns or insights, if you like, with you, and see how you respond, if at all, and if you have any ideas to the contrary or a different point of view. Please feel free to write them down in the comments below, or perhaps contact me by email or whatever way you wish. Anyway, I noticed that in the translations of the Quran that I have read, and I have read about a dozen of them, including the main ones, I found that certain words were not rendered accurately. So I designed a little test as to how to ascertain the reliability or evaluate any translation. And for this purpose, I have chosen 4 expressions that are commonly mistranslated. And I have chosen 5 translators, most of whom are well known, and I looked up how they translated these particular verses. Now, the first criterion, or the first verse which I looked at, was verse 44 in chapter 5 of the Quran, which refers to the previous scriptures or revelations, the Torah and Injil, as revelations in which we find guidance and light. Now, a number of translators have translated this verse using the past tense, which I think is entirely incorrect. And unfortunately, many translators translated using the past tense, even though the Arabic fiha, huda wa nur, does not imply the past tense in any sense at all. So now people like Muhammad Asad and Abdullah Yusuf Ali both fell into this category. They did not render this verse accurately. They both used the past tense. So I didn't give them a mark for that particular verse. So let's go on to the next verse, which is verse 46 of the same surah, which again refers to the previous revelations, and again uses the expression fiha huda wa nur, which means in it is guidance and light. And again, both of the translators I mentioned mistranslated the term by the expression by using the past tense. Let's give kudos to Marmaduke Pickthall, Edip Yuksel, and I believe Muhammad Tahir-ul-Qadri, all of whom have translated this verse correctly and used the present tense. So now, another criterion which I have used was the expression Muslim, and I looked up how did the translators refer to the verse in Surah number 3, verse number 36, where the Prophet Ibrahim, peace be on him, is referred to as a Muslim. Now, interestingly, not every translator referred to Ibrahim as a Muslim in their translation. Not even Brother Edip. He designed some other expression, but we can come back to that later. Many translators translate this verse as implying that Ibrahim was a person who submitted to God, or he was one of those who submitted, which is not actually incorrect. It's just that I think using the word Muslim is better than using some equivalent which does not convey the full meaning of this term. The translation of this verse is important because depending on how you translate this verse will indicate how you view the previous revelations. Now, Muslims, traditional Muslims, are under the misconception that of abrogation, which says that the previous revelations or the previous scriptures or both were abrogated by the Quran. Now, this is hardly the case. I have found 20 verses in the Quran, all of which say that the previous revelations were confirmed. They were not abrogated by the Quran. So the failure to use the word Muslim when referring to Ibrahim in the Quran seems to strengthen the case of those people who claim that the previous revelations were abrogated, because it seems to imply that there were no Muslims before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, and that everybody before him was somehow something other than, of the believers I mean, was something other than a Muslim. Again, this is very far from the case, because not only does the Quran refer to Abraham as a Muslim, but even it also refers to the helpers of Jesus, the Hawariyun, as Muslims. And there are many other persons before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, who are referred to in the Quran as Muslims. So Islam did not begin with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him. It was there from the beginning. And this is something that people need to understand if they want to understand Islam correctly. So here's another criterion or area in which unfortunately some of the translators did not get it right and allow their translation to be compromised by a prejudice that has no foundation in revelation. So now that leaves me another expression that I want to turn to, which is the term mutashabihat, also in chapter 3, but in verse 7. Now, the term mutashabihat means allegorical. Unfortunately, many translators have translated it wrongly, in my view, as ambiguous or unclear. Now, this rendition of the term mutashabihat is highly misleading because, first of all, the Quran presents itself as a book that is clear, Kitab al-Mubin, and a book that makes things clear. And besides, we would not expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be unclear in His revelations. Lack of clarity is something that happens to human beings. I don't think we should expect that it would happen with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should have to remember the point that indeed the Quran is a clear book, which in fact is in some ways self-explanatory and requires very little assistance from third parties to help us understand the message of this revelation. So now, like I said, this verse has also been poorly translated in many cases, although there are a few people that have translated it correctly and used the word allegorically. The word allegorical to refer to those verses in Surah number 3, chapter 7. So most of the translators that I have looked at misrendered a number of these terms, and so as a result their translations are less than fully reliable. So I'm hoping that Edip's translation will be a better translation than what came before, and perhaps I can also inform you of the results of my survey. The results of my survey placed Yusuf Ali and Muhammad Asad. They received, they received one out of the out of the four. In other words, they mistranslated three of those expressions which I looked at. And in a second place, we have Edip and Tahir-ul-Qadri, who scored 2 out of 4. And in the first place, I'm happy to report, comes the translation by Muhammad Marmaduke Pickthall, who translated all, 3 of the verses correctly, with the exception of the verse about Abraham, where he used an expression other than Muslim to refer to Abraham, where the Quran refers to Ibrahim as a Muslim.